how do people start believing in themselves so strongly that they actually make whatever they're thinking happen?
You're a product of your environment. When you're a child, maybe you can't help that. But as you get older, you're a product of your decisions. She said it's £50 for the business, £50. Because my mindset back then, I'd not been in it. I was like, I nearly didn't do it because it's like, oh, £50. Because I didn't know what it, and what's interesting, I made millions from that business. Can you imagine? But where else can you buy a business for £550 and turn it into multiple seven figures? It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I know no one needs to tell me that that's the industry of hope and possibility. It changed mine and my kid's life forever, and along the way it helps many other people.
You reached a point where you make obscene amount of money in passive income. You still do. And didn't complacency creep in at some point of time?
Yeah, that was a point, but I had to learn over time that money alone doesn't make you happy. What does is fulfillment.
Thanks for doing this for me. Really appreciate your time today.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here, and I know we're going to cover a variety of topics, so ready to dive in.
Yeah. And you know why I call you Coach Lavelle, because you coach me in a lot of shit as well. We can't obviously talk online about the coaching that you do for me, but yeah, I mean, I love the way you talk to people in terms of understanding their problems, where they're at in life, and you're a great listener as well. So while you're an amazing orator, you're a great listener. The James I know, I want people to know the person you are, what you achieved, how you achieved that. And I would start by asking this very simple question, which kind of, encompasses who you are. Why should people listen to this podcast? What do you think they're going to take away from this podcast as entrepreneurs, as individuals, as people who are in a relationship, as people who are going through a tough time in their business, in life, everything together?
Well, that's a good question to start with, straight in at the deep end. I think when I look back at my own journey and where I've come from, hopefully I'm an example of your past doesn't have to equal your future. So I always say that the past is a place of reference, not residence. You learn from there. You don't have to live there. And through a dysfunctional beginning to the point I've got to now, it's been a roller coaster. There's been lots of ups and downs, lots of lessons, lots of wins, lots of losses, but it's all experiences, and a wise man once told me that all experiences are equal. So with that said, hopefully, as we twist and turn through those experiences, there's some valuable information for people, because what I've learned in life as well is that we don't live long enough to make all our own mistakes. Yeah. It's best to learn from other people along the way. So, part of that is, like I said, is sharing some of that wisdom so that someone might, not have to make that mistake.
Yeah, you being very modest. You helped a lot of people. I see, obviously we discuss a lot of things offline. I've seen the messages that you get from people when you help them achieve their goals. And I think it's simple things that you do for them that makes a difference. A lot of times people are not there to listen to you. A lot of times people are not there. You always see a conflict of interest. Why is somebody advising me something? And is there any interest in that? And I think you take that away from people when you actually talk to people. I've seen you do that. You do it selflessly. I know you run it as a business as well, but you do it selflessly as well. I want to go back to what one of the things you spoke about. The past is a place of reference, right? Now, let's go back to your childhood. Let's go back to your upbringing. James, where were you born? What did you, how was your childhood?
Well, it's interesting. It's a bit of a full circle moment. We talk about some of the business ventures that will be starting soon. It was actually just down the road, about like a mile or so down the road, in Collyhurst. So, yeah, like obviously as a kid, when you're an adult, you can look back. As a kid, it was just normal. But when you look back, you go, okay, maybe that compared to a lot of people wasn't so normal, right? Crazy set of circumstances. I love my family, but it's fair to say that it was a bit of a dysfunctional upbringing. Drink, drugs and chaos were never far away. And I think despite that, there was a lot of love that I felt, which is really important. But with drink, drugs, chaos and all the other things, as they say, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. So I wasn't a bad lad or anything like that, but I just found myself mimicking those behaviours as nature intended, right? We tend to do what people do. So
is that because that becomes a norm for a child? When you're at that age, it's impressionable. Do you think that's the norm that they live with and that's a normal for them?
Well, certainly for me, I think what I realise now, and I think I parent this way, I take the responsibility seriously, is, you know, my dad wasn't about much. And that's not a sob story. Most people experience the same. But I understand the value in that. My mum did the best she could. She did a great job. But for me, as a young boy who was becoming unruly, that masculine presence was probably needed, that direction, maybe that little bit of discipline, because I kind of just did what I wanted.
Yeah.
And how are you supposed to know best when you're 13, 14 or 15? And then actually, because of that mentor wasn't there, the older boys off the streets became my mentor. So what happens then, they lead you down a path, don't they? And you're young and impressionable. So that's kind of how it ended up. And I actually think back to the football I was involved in, played at a decent level when I was a kid, Manchester Boys. And the guys who made it, I always remember their dads being on the sideline. And they were strict. You know, people say, oh, he's always on the case. But I think that's what you need. Don't you? You need someone who's going to hold you to a higher standard.
Oh, I'm funny you say this, because I always give credit to my parents for this.
Yes.
You know, my dad, you know, I used to feel, oh man, what the fuck, man? Why are my parents so strict? And today I go back and say, man, I'm so fucking grateful, because, you know, I didn't get a lot of money or whatever to play with. I had friends who had more stuff than me. But my parents gave me good values, gave me good education. And my dad said that you have to fucking work hard. That's all. That was a value system that was created for me. And by him being there and pushing me to say you need to do better and better and better, and being by my side is all you require, because at the end of the day you have to walk the path. Nobody can walk it for you, right? Somebody can show you the path, but the hard work has to be done by you. Like you said, you know, I remember we were discussing the other day when you said, you know, a coach is on the corner for you, but that when you're in the corner as a coach, you observe, you push the limits. You also sometimes say, you know, well done, you know, boy, you know, you've done a good job, because nobody's doing that for you any which ways. So I think a coach's job is a very tough one, because you have to have a balance. You can't be like, oh fuck, you're good, you're amazing, you're this, that. You can't be all strict as well. It's a good balance, but you have to be there. You know, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, you have to be there with them, and in different situations, guided a different way. Tell me, in your experience, when, you know, from a child, as you grew up, right, and as you saw this, you know, what was around you, what was happening, the place you were in, how did you from there move into your teenage, you know, years and evolve into what you are as a person today? When did this transition happen?
Yeah, let me just go back to one of your previous points and how your dad showed up for you. Love is often accountability. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
You know, they have a different version of love, and it shows itself in many different ways. But him being there for you and holding you to a higher standard, that's really love.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that, and I don't blame my dad. And, you know, God rest him, he died when I was like 18. He was just doing the best that he could based on his experience in life. But my time spent with my dad was in the pub. Everyone smoked in the pub then, so I'd spend a Saturday afternoon inhaling secondhand smoke. I'd probably have about 16 cans of Coke, 14 packets of crisp, and then fall asleep on the chair. You know, that was the quality time with my dad, right? Because that's what he wanted to do, and I was just a passenger. But so I now understand that, and the role I try and play in my daughter's life is some of the things that we've talked about, is to hold the standard, to show her the way, to be the leader, and those things like that. So yeah, that kind of happened early on, and like I said, I didn't really have that. I kind of did what I wanted, and there was a bit of dysfunction around me, and then kind of got expelled from school, was messing around with the older lads, and, you know, just doing what young lads do, drinking in pubs, getting up to no good. And then I just remember, I remember thinking, how's this going to work out for me? I could see people in the pub sat in the same place, the same chair that they'd sat for the last 30 years, and they didn't look that happy to me. So the first job that I had was at a bacon factory. And this is a crazy story, because I really got a snapshot of what the future was like. And the reason I wanted to get a job is I didn't have my own money. Like, my mates were buying me drinks in the pub, and the people in the pub, this was near the bacon factory, and they seemed to have like a bit of money on a Friday. I was like, oh, these guys must be doing well for themselves. So I ended up getting a job at a bacon factory, and I had yellow wellies on, one of those DNA suits. I had a hairnet even though I didn't have any hair. Do you know what I mean? I was like, what? And then basically, this is a true story, I was like passing bacon along the production line. That's all I was doing all day. And then like after 2 days, I was like, man, my side's killing. I'm just passing the bacon, from one side to the other. So I built the confidence up to speak.
Nobody those fucking 6-pack.
Yeah, but it's on one side. So I built the confidence up to speak to the team leader and said, look, I've been doing this all day. Is there something else that I can do? She took me around the other side and put me back going the other way. So the first lesson is be careful what you ask for. But in those moments, what I realized is, okay, right now, in this environment, for me, I didn't have no qualifications. I got expelled from school. This is the best I can hope for. I need to escape the environment because in the beginning, you're a product of your environment. When you're a child, maybe you can't help that. But as you get older, you're a product of your decisions. So I had to make a decision to leave. So the smartest thing that I ever did was understanding I needed to change the environment. So I decided to join the British Army. Didn't really understand the things, what I could do. I just knew that this is a chance for me to escape. Went down to the Army careers, did some tests, did an intelligence test. They quickly worked out that, it was very limited, the things I could do. I had no qualifications. They gave me a rifle, said face that way, and that was my career. I was a combat infantryman. But nonetheless, that moment was pivotal for me because when I left Manchester with a bag and a letter that gave me instructions of where to go in Scotland to training, that was the beginning of a beautiful journey for me.
Yeah, sometimes the toughest thing that happened in your life, some decisions are so important. And if you go back and say, thank fucking God for that, because had I not taken that decision, I would have been a different person altogether. And at that point of time, was it your peer pressure? Was it people around you joining the army? How did you end up joining the army? Because you were not in that environment where you would, everybody's enlisting or going for the armed forces.
Yeah.
The decision making, how did it happen?
Two things. There was a guy in the pub again who he was different than everyone else. So he'd come home on weekends from the army and he was just the way he dressed. He was smarter and he had something about him. You know what I mean? I was like, what's this guy? Anyway, he was in the army. Then one of my friends, we noticed this guy was like, we should join the army. So we went through the process together. Ironically at the time we was like smoking weed and whatever and high off that. So it was like making those decisions. But it was just like at first, let's go through this process. And we went down to the army careers and he couldn't get in because he had a criminal record. So it was kind of, he initiated it and then he couldn't get in. And I just kind of seen it through. I was just on at the next step and at the next step. But the first thing that I experienced that I'd never felt before, because people were then in my circle were kind of cheering me on, that it was something good. And I felt good that maybe I'm doing something. Oh, you'll be in the army. Like, I felt that sense of pride, even though I wasn't even there yet, that people, all of a sudden, that maybe I could do something that I could feel good about myself, but also the people in my life can, be proud of, the person I'm becoming. So that was a real pivotal moment. So it was initiated by other people. But once this kind of momentum started, I was like, nah, I can do this. And I seen it as a real opportunity and a catalyst to transform my life.
James, in the armed forces, like I come from I never joined the army. But my dad was in the army, retired as a colonel. And obviously I traveled with him across the country. I changed fucking 11 schools. So no teacher ever got an opportunity to get back at me. I was in different cities, in different states, people speaking different languages. So I learned a lot because of that. That was my experience in the army, because I was never in the army, but my dad was in the army. But I know that the armed forces teaches you a lot. My last case was also one of your business partners, one of your investments, Kyle.
Yeah.
Right. He was in the armed forces as well, and he's had some learnings. Tell me what happened in the armed forces. You were there for a pretty substantial time, right? I would still call it substantial because it just teaches you so much. Your tough moments in the army, anything that, stands out, you think that impacted your life?
Wow. Even from the beginning, it was a shock to the system. I was kind of before that lazy, unmotivated, up to no good, just did what I wanted. And the moment I landed at this place, it's a place called Glencorse in Scotland. It's not too far from Edinburgh. This was 1999, bro. Like, I got a stick in my chest and I was told about myself from that moment, and life was different. It was brutal. It was a shock to the system. And as they used to say, we're not training people for a tickling competition. We're training people for war. And straight away it was very clear that this is going to be difficult, right? And it was crazy because people were quitting left, right, and center because they come from the same backgrounds that I had, and maybe they'd not been used to that level of discipline and structure. And the whole process is we're going to weed out those who are not ready. That's the whole process.
What
right?
made you stick? What made you stick?
Honestly,
To the
I asked myself that question. I remember some of the things we were doing. So we was training and we getting messed about. They're constantly pulling your chain, pushing your buttons. This is a whole kind of psychological warfare, right? And then we'd go and exercise, and we were training in the UK. And can you imagine in January in like the North, Scotland, like you're there for a week and it's like diagonal, that sleety rain. And from the moment you get off, you soak into the bone, and basically you're just doing army stuff. You're tabbing, you're simulating battle. And it's just constant. You sleep deprivation at night, so you're cold, wet, hungry, sleep deprived, and that's day one. You're done, and then you just stay in there. I don't know. Honestly, when I look back at part of it was just like, what am I going to do if I don't do this? Like, it wasn't like this. There wasn't this other burning desire that I've got nothing else to do with my life than be here. But through that process, what happened at the end of that is, as you can imagine, as they see the old pictures, people are putting crosses on the faces of people who didn't make it, because most don't make it. So by the end of the training, it's like when you made it, you felt this sense of achievement because that you've been put to the test, you've been put through the ringer, and not everyone makes it there. So that was the first time in my life I felt like, do you know what? I'm really becoming someone and I'm capable of some stuff, because I didn't really know that before, but I'd not been put to the test. I'd not been challenged.
So what did that tell you about yourself? What did that training teach you about yourself?
That if I apply myself, if I stay in the game, that I'm capable of things. Because I had evidence at looking around that some people, they couldn't do what I did, right? Some people quit, and that's fine. It's not for everyone. But just by the mere fact that I stayed till the end was confirmation that I could achieve some stuff if I set my mind to it, right? And then that was the beginning of the journey in the military, the progression. I served 15 years in total, and there was an evolution within the military, a progression that I could chart every time. It was the next step. What was this? Promotion. Then I transferred. In the beginning, I was a combat infantryman. I served in combat environments in Northern Ireland, Iraq. They had their own challenges, right? But then after that was what's the next thing? I transitioned into a new trade. Again, that was a selection process. So it was constantly being tested. And through that process, it's never what you get. It's the person you become along the way. So the army was a vehicle of transformation for me. And can you imagine the snotty-nosed teenager who went in with a chip in his shoulder to the man who left in like 2014? They were two completely different humans.
Tell me about your experience in Iraq.
It was a bit wild. I think when I look back now, I understand the magnitude of what was going on. But when you're there, just like, what was it at the time? Like 23, like what, just in crazy situations going on, being attacked, down riots, all these things, and you still don't fully I don't know, it's weird when I look back now to go into that situation now. My mindset will be completely different. But then we were just with my mates in a different country doing what we was doing. And you know what? Despite all that, when we arrived in Iraq, it was the Iraqi summer. So can you imagine the temperatures? It was unbearable. And at the time, we was in a disused hotel. So it wasn't this beautiful base, a disused hotel. We didn't have aircon. Like literally, we'd take our shirts off at night, because of the salt. And it was like they could stand up. Like it was just, and we were on these cot beds. And we were just sweating. It was mad. But you know what? We had each other. And you put guys together in any part of the world, no matter, and they've got nothing, but they've got each other. They just find a way to laugh.
Yeah.
And it's usually through someone else's misery. Guys are like that. But it was just
boys
like,
for you, man.
Yeah, but the thing, bro, after that, when I look back and obviously the life I've built now, and you get accustomed to some comforts, right? But honestly, one of the things I remember is coming back from Iraq after 6 months. And firstly, not seeing people who you've seen. But, cheese on toast, bro. It just... No, because we're eating like rations and I was like, cheese on toast hit different. I was like, what is... So all the things that we take for granted, landing back in the UK was just like, oh wow, like roads, like, you know, like without potholes in, like just crazy things, man. So what an experience as a young man to have to navigate that season. You know, there's a lot of different contributing factors, but really an appreciation when I came home and sleeping in your bed. I went from a camp bed. There's a cot bed that was stuck to every night because I was sweating. We didn't have aircon. I was dehydrating in the middle of the night, like having to drink water because I'd lost that many fluids, and then going home and just being in a bed with a quilt. Can you imagine? So this is why I always say all experiences are equal. You don't know at the time how valuable that is, but it shapes you as a human, right?
And people are just used to moaning about small things.
I know. It happens to me now. Sometimes I have to catch myself, right? Because first world problems, but when you look back and you say, no, look at the experiences I had. Look what I've really had to deal with. Look what people are having to deal with in life every day.
Yeah.
And, you know, we think our problems, a great quote I once heard is that you think you have problems, you know, sit around a group of people, put all your problems in the middle of the table. You'll probably take your own back,
Yeah.
you know, because they're not really problems.
Yeah.
And those times in my life are a good reminder to me, like, hey, nothing's that bad. You know, look at some of the things that you've navigated through.
Yeah. About the army training, right? Tell me an episode about the army training that you are always reminded of in your own head. It goes through it again and again. And I know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I don't want to share that one today. But let me share another one, because like to people, it's like now there'd be like court cases, investigations. It'd be shocking to them. But then it was just normal. It was what we would call character building.
Yeah.
That's just how it went. You were new.
Yeah.
And that was it. You was bottom of the food chain, and people would do whatever they wanted to you. It was like, cool. But my thing was, I'm going to smile because I knew this was a game. So I'll give you an example. You know, one of the corporals come in and at the night in the room, and he's like, oh, what's going on here? And after hours, you know, we have a little, oh, we're having a drink, corporal, you know, and he's like, what else you up to? And one of the lads was like, thought it was funny. He said, oh, we're playing bowls. He went, oh, you think you're funny, do you? He said, we are going to play bowls. And he made us all strip naked. He put all the cans of beer that we were drinking from in the middle of the room, and we were doing naked roly-polies into the cans. Like, can you imagine that now? Like, people would be horrified. We were just like, this was normal stuff. We would just do what we were told to do. And the whole game was people are going to put you in situations and do things that other people now might be horrified. But to us, it was like, whatever. Like the bigger boys are making us do stuff, right? But it was character building because they were constantly, they knew at some point, I'm going to have to stand side by side with you. And I want to know that you're not going to melt. So it was a constant test for the first couple of years. And the one you were talking about, I won't go into too much detail, but again, like the first night I was in the block, and the only thing that a person said to me, this was like a friendly warning, lock your door. That was it. I'm like, hi everyone, James, you know, like try to get to know everyone, you know what I'm like?
Yeah.
And I was like, just looking at me or pushing my hand away, like they didn't even speak to me. I was like a ghost. They seen through me, right? And then I just remember at 3 a.m, and my bladder's never been my strong point, and I just needed the toilet. And I woke up and I'm in this 4-man room. So there's 4 beds, but there's none other beds that are being used at the moment. So I'm in my little bed. We don't have quilts, and it was like a little, we call it itchy, scratchy blankets. You know, this little, I'm like Oliver Twist in the bed.
In the world
Yeah. I mean, like Oliver, and I can hear the guys partying in the corridor. I was like, oh. And then I needed the toilet, and it went quiet, and I was like, well, this is my chance. So can you imagine? I scurry out of my bed in my little underpants, right? I open the door, it's like, and I look, and it's the coast is clear. I shuffle down to the toilet. Now it's like, oh, I needed this, you know, that just joy when you've needed a wee for a few hours. And I get back in bed, and I was like, oh no, the door. And as I went to sit up to think I need to shut the door opened, and there's like 4 shadowy figures, and the words were, is this where the party is? And I was like, oh no. I was like, yeah. Because again, in my head, I'm like, whatever's like, well, yeah, cool. Like, I'm not going to be like, I was like, yeah. And anyway, long story short, they didn't do anything for a while because they were just like, they just knew them being there, and they were drinking, smoking, playing cards in my room, just ignoring me. They knew that was a like a mental. That was
That
like
was a test.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, well, what they doing here? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I was just like, all right. So I knew something was coming, and then one of the guys comes in, and they'd found like a half dead hedgehog outside, and then hey, listen, there was rolling it on my belly. One of the guys asked, "Have you ever played hedgehog football?" I was like, "No." Do you know what that is? And I was like, "No," but like, do you want to know? I was like, "Yeah, I'm up for it." So basically, there was just this half dead hedgehog, and they were just throwing it, and I was the goalkeeper in my underpants trying to stop this hedgehog. Can you imagine? Like, I'm saying it now, people will be like, "What the?" This is 1999 as a combat infantryman training. Like, there was no one cared. There was no like, there was just mad stuff like that. That at the time, I was just like, this, what's going on here? And I remember ringing my mum the next day on a payphone. Can you imagine that? That's how long ago it was, on a payphone. And she's like, how is it? How is everyone? I said, oh, do you know what, Mum? They're so friendly. Everyone's great. You know, because it's your mum, right? I'm like...
You're playing with the hedgehog.
So still got all these track marks on my belly from this day. You know, like whatever it was. But I tell you what happened very quickly. People knew, like, nah, this guy's all right. Like, he's not bitching. He's not complaining. He's not feeling sorry for himself. That was just... There's guys who could come on this podcast who could tell you way worse stories. There were just things that people are just going to mess with you. And then when you demonstrate that you can handle like dealing with that, now they feel good about, okay, I'm going to stand shoulder to shoulder with this guy one day in a combat environment. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Fun
and
times.
I think that's I think that's the important thing, you know, when you're in a war, when you're in that situation, you actually relying on somebody like 1,000,000%. You know, your life in somebody else's hand. It's very difficult to let, when you and you see this, you know, when you ask somebody to give you cover fire, as they say it in the army, if he fucks up, you're fucking dead.
Yeah.
You know, it's just in binary. There is no gray there. You just fucked. So you have to fucking know that you can rely on the guy, and that's how they say it's character building, like you mentioned. And look at 2024. We're sitting here today, and you can actually offend anybody by saying fucking anything.
Exactly.
And people are talking about things that didn't even matter in 99, 2000, 2001 that kind of era. People are not talking about the shit that we're talking about today. You don't even know how to address a person. You could offend them by just calling them somebody, and they get offended. How do you think we're going to help the next generation build character and do what, you know, people have been able to achieve now? Because that character building that you spoke about is why you are where you are today.
Yeah, it's a real great question. And I think it's a personal choice, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to be offended, you can find a million ways every day to be offended. But the problem is you got to carry that, you know, that energy every day. So I think you have to make a decision. What do you want from your life? Where do you want to put your energy? And firstly, understanding that everyone's different. People have different opinions, and that, you know what? That's fine. What I've realized is a lot of people don't like other people if they don't think and behave like them. That's interesting, isn't it? So it's like people like them until someone shows up in a different way. They don't like that. Totally off topic, but what was interesting recently, I had a client and we got on really well. I was getting some great results with a client, but to emphasize that point, and just talked about the general election in America, just mentioned it on my Facebook. No, I don't really get into politics, but this is like an interesting dynamic. I won't go into the details, but the client then said she didn't want to work with me. Can you imagine? Simply because she felt, and it wasn't anything controversial that I said, she felt, she was on one side of the fence and she felt I was on the other side of the fence. So all of a sudden, despite getting great results, having great rapport, having a great client-coach relationship, because this person made a decision, this guy doesn't think like me on this subject, I can't align myself with him. She chose to be offended. It's crazy. So I think that's a symptom of what's going on in the world, but it's a personal choice. And I don't know what we do about it. It's an individual thing. You have to decide what you want to do and how you want to show up in your life. And if you want to be offended every time someone thinks or speaks different than you, then it's going to be a tough ride.
Yeah. James, let's go back to getting out of the armed forces. You're now out of the armed forces and you come back here and you got to do network marketing by accident, actually, right? I think, if I'm not wrong, it was it was 2004 you got back to,
No,
2006.
2013 was
Wow.
Yeah.
So from 99 to 2013 you were in the armed forces.
Well, I got out in 2014. The first part of network marketing, I was still full-time in the military.
Well, yeah.
And I was building this little side hustle at night. And the mad thing was, the side hustle blew up very quickly. And whilst I was still in the army, I was making more in a month with my side hustle than I was getting a year in the military. Can you imagine? But beyond that, it was just...
The military was building your character, and network marketing was giving you the money. It was
Yeah.
preparing you for this.
Well, all the attributes that I'd learned there, structure, discipline, all the traits that I gained, now I just applied it into business. And obviously it has to be the right business, and there's some other things. But yeah, it was crazy. The military was such a great foundation for me. But my daughter being born in 2011, I was kind of a bit like, well, this felt like a single man's life. I don't just want to be a weekend dad. But what do I do? Remember, I got expelled from school. I left with no qualifications. Now I've built a good career in the military. First part was a combat infantryman. Second part was Royal Army Physical Training Corps instructor. So we run the gym, you know, so we'd be responsible for the fitness and health of all the troops. So I built up a good career. But now I didn't want to stay there. I was a staff sergeant looking at, you know, promotion to a sergeant major. I was in the home straight of a pension. So, you know, it was kind of like 14, 15 years. And then 22 years, you get a full pension. No one leaves at that point. You're coming over the hill, right? But I just, you know, wanted something more for me and my daughter. And, you know, I think the first thing to change is having a clear intention. I didn't know the detail, but I was like, I'm going to figure this out. There's something about the human mind when you put it to work and you're very clear, I'm going to figure this out and things are going to work out. And that's what happened. And as the story goes, you were saying, like, it was funny actually. I was on like some dating site back in the day and there was a girl there. And
It always is.
Oh, yeah. Well, so we matched. And then, as you do, it's like back in that mess. It feels forever ago, like 2013. Then I added her on Facebook, and I'm not gonna lie, I was like, she's not all that. She's not really for me. But we're just connected on Facebook, right? But everything happens for a reason. So that's why I give context to that story. It was a random connection on the dating site back in the day. I did it on Facebook. There was no real, you know, attraction there. But a few weeks later, I seen her talking about like a business, an online business, and like selling health products and making money.
This was, which year was this? 2013?
13, yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of reached out to her and she just sent me this blurb in a message, like a big, you know, with loads of links. And it was like, I was like, well, hang on a minute. So I couldn't understand this because I wasn't very experienced in business. Obviously, I've been in the military, but in my mind, business was a traditional business where bricks, mortar. And then all of a sudden, this business seemed to be the company would make the products, they would ship the products, they would invoice the customer, and they'd pay you a commission. So, okay, so you can go and get some customers. So my question was, how many customers can you get? And the answer was as many as you want. And the next thing was, well, if you build a team, a community, and you help them get some customers, you get a little override commission as well. Oh, okay. So how big can you build your team? As big as you want. Well, this was liberating information for me because I knew I didn't have the skills at that point. I knew I didn't have the experience, but you know what I had? I had enthusiasm and energy. And you know how far that will take you in life? And all of a sudden, I seen this opportunity. And so this girl had kind of sent me these links. I joined up. I didn't really know what it was. And here's the thing. She said it's £50 for the business, £50. Because my mindset back then, I'd not been in, I was like, oh, I nearly didn't do it because it's like, oh, £50. Because I didn't know what it led to. And what's interesting, I made millions from that business. Can you imagine? But like at the time, £50, I was like, oh, what is it? So she put me in this kind of Facebook group. She disappeared into the background. And then I ended up going to someone in the group said, I've got what we call an in-home meeting. So I was like, I need to learn about this. Went to this in-home meeting. And they was talking about these products and how you can make money. And someone nudged me and said, see that guy there? He makes $30,000 a month. And I was like, no, he doesn't. Because I'd never known anyone who made $30,000 a month. Turns out that he did. And he became my mentor and taught me exactly how to do the same. How crazy is that? But at first it was, no, he doesn't. But if he does, there's a little part of me, if he does, I need to figure out how. And you know, the driver for the story, I've told you this before, but I think it's important. It wasn't because I wanted to be rich, successful, all those things. I wanted to be home for my daughter. And at that time, we lived in a little pokey flat in Cheetham Hill. It was a little, like, literally box flat. And I always joke, to get out the front room, you used to do a 3-point turn, right? It was that tight. And it was a first floor flat. And Lacey was like a toddler, and she'd look out the window and there'd be kids playing across the street. And in my mind, I'm like, man, my kid hasn't even got a garden. You know what it's like in summer in those apartments? Like, there's no aircon, bro. You know, and the couch is pressed up against the patio doors, which are not really patio doors. They've got a bar there. So I was like, man, I just one day, if I could live in a place and have a garden and a slide and a trampoline for my daughter. That was the vision at the beginning. So while all these people were making money and you can create this, I just wanted a slide and a trampoline. Well, armed with that information and that vision, I just got to work. And honestly, it was it's fair to say it was a Cinderella story. Like I said, within a few months I was earning more in a month with this business, and I was getting a year in the military. But because I was achieving so much, and this company had been around like 30-40 years, but there was this social media revolution, there was this boom. And I built one of the fastest ever organizations. They had like kind of a rank structure, been around 40 years. I was one of the fastest to the top position ever. So it was all of a sudden you've gone from an army guy who's building a business to now they're getting you to speak on stage in like Barcelona, you know, 4,000 people, 5,000 people, asking your story. How did you do it? I didn't really know I did it. I just did it, right? You just like, so it was like ignorance on fire, but things changed like really quickly. So at that point, obviously at the army, I was like, it's been great, but I'm done. I've now found a way. I've now found a vehicle that can transform mine and my daughter's life. So I'm leaving the army and I'm going all in on this.
You made a very powerful statement, ignorance and fire. You know, I was speaking with Jack Marlin, one of my friends, our common friends. And I asked him this question on his, on his podcast that, Jack, how did you do this entrepreneurship journey? Why? He says, if I knew how fucking difficult it was, I wouldn't have done it. So it's ignorance is bliss. Actually, ignorance a lot of times, because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. You don't ask those questions. What if I fail? I think my biggest challenge I see today with people who want to be entrepreneurs is that the first question they ask is, what if this fails? Rather than saying, what if it succeeds? The first thing you tell somebody, or you can make it big, is, no, but what if it goes wrong? So you got to invest, say, 10 grand on yourself. Yeah, okay, I'll invest 10 grand. What if I lose those 10 grand? Not think that those 10 grand can become 10 million, like your 50 quid. You had that choice to make that day, to put those 50 pounds or not. A lot of people wouldn't have put in that money and they won't have seen the success. So yeah, it's about decision making. It's ignorance. Sometimes you just try things, then you say, I'll make it work.
I think you got to be a bit delusional in the beginning, because it is you've never created it before. It's like, nah, I can do it. And you have to come from that place. You know what's so strange? When I look back at that time, I honestly wasn't hoping and praying I could do it. It's really hard to explain. I had this belief, and I don't know where it came from. Like I said, it must have been delusion. Like I knew, not like hoping, thinking. With every fiber of my being, I knew I was going to do it. Was done. It was already it was crazy. So it was done, and then it was just like the world made way, and everything that happened afterwards, it was already like, well, I knew this was going to happen. And I look back, I was like, where did I get that delusion from? Where did that belief come from? Because I don't know.
But where do you think it came from? It's a very interesting one, how do people start believing in themselves so strongly that they actually make whatever they're thinking happen?
Was so interesting. I asked myself this question, and I think a fuel for me, and if there's any parents listening to this will fully understand, looking at my daughter and all of a sudden caring about someone more than you care about yourself. Like, man, I got to figure this out for this kid, because you, like we talked about in the beginning, like some of the background and the cycles that I've been in, I was like, nah, that's not happening. That this is so, that level of there was just no negotiation in my mind. There was just a line in the sand moment. And I just needed the right vehicle. And when I seen these people, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, I'm like, it's done. That was it. Like, I'm not going to quit on my daughter. I'm not going to, this is the door that I've been waiting for. I'm going to walk right through it.
Tell me, how did you build this business? In the sense, in a year's time, a couple of years' time, you made your first $1 million Within,
First couple of years.
yeah. So how did that happen?
Yeah, looking back, so now we have all the theory and the knowledge. So I'm consciously competent, but then I was unconsciously competent. I can see how I became successful, but I was just doing it. It was intuitive. So I wasn't really doing the online stuff like we're doing today. There were a couple of things that you needed to be successful, right? There were people who always knew more than me, like very technical in information. They knew everything about the product and everything about the business. I just learned what I needed to learn. And I got really good at sharing that information with people in such a way that I think people, when they heard it, they felt inspired to take action. They thought, this guy's onto something, because I believed it like with every fiber in my body, and there was like a music to my voice. Like it wasn't like I'm not trying to convince you, like this is what we're doing and you can be a part of this. So I think that confidence spilled out of me. And looking back, what you need to build a successful business in that industry, you need to be able to present, recruit, train, and then build community. So again, I wasn't necessarily trained in those areas. It was just intuitive. It was funny because what I do in the evenings after finishing with the military, we'd go and do events. So we'd turn up to places. So you'd have a team and you say, hey, put some people in a room, right? So you're going to get 30, 40 people in a room, and you go up there with a flip chart and you break the business down. But you do it in such a way that was simplistic, and we do it through stories. And the power of stories, right?
Yeah.
Stories displace all resistance, and people put themselves in the story. So it wasn't all this information, how much money you can make. There was a little bit of that. But Julie, who was sat in the front row, she seen Jackie telling her story, how she was a struggling mum, and now she earns £3,000 a month. You see the power of that?
Yeah.
She already thinks, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Storytelling, I always say, is a fucking life skill. If you don't know how to storytell, you're never going to sell your vision to anybody else. And people relate to people. People don't relate to fucking, you can put things in management books, you can give them concepts, you can give them models, business models, whatever. Nothing goes down better than an actual true story, because people relate to it. And at some point of time, everybody's been in a similar situation where everything is fucked, and it's not for me, I'm not going to make it big. And then you see, boom, there's a story, she was in a worse position than me, and she's where she is today. I can fucking do it. It's the power of that storytelling that makes such a difference. Now, when you say you build this team, you started presenting, training, your pillars, whatever you used to do this. The very important aspect about building network marketing, as I understand, is you only succeed when your team succeeds. How did you ensure that your team was doing well?
Yeah, it's actually true. And that's why I'll always, even though I'm not in the industry no more, I'll have a lot of love for it. Because to be successful, a great man once said, help people get what they want and you'll get what you want. So you don't necessarily have to focus, because you can't be successful unless your team is successful, right? So really for me, it was leading from the front. Like those first few years, honestly, like no one worked like me, no one. And even when the money was coming in, no one worked like me. So it was because it was just, so that was that leadership element and being there and helping your team, the people who maybe can't present like you, right? So you would present for them. This is what I'm saying. If you was in my team and you couldn't really articulate the power of this business or even the products, but you could get people to a room, I want to drive 3 hours. I'm going to come and close that room from you. I'm going to come and influence those people and show them the vision of why they should be excited and why they should join this business. So, and by doing that, I help you build your business so you're happy. But then I'm focused on building your business. What happens to my business?
Tell me something. You reached a point where you're making obscene amount of money in passive income. You still do. And didn't complacency creep in at some point of time?
Yes. Yes, it did. I always remember this. So, and this is the journey we all have to go on. Here's the thing with money. It won't make you happy, but people don't believe you. They got to find out for themselves. And of course, a lack of money is a passport to misery. I understand that. So I'm not saying don't go and make your money. I'm saying at some point you'll realize that life has to have more meaning than that. But I came from nothing, right? I wanted money because you want to solve some problems for your family and yourself. But yeah, the money was coming in, and then all of a sudden, this complacency. What happens, right? We take back to the military, coming from nothing, you know, fighting for everything, building yourself up, and the money comes in, and, you know, traveling a little bit. Oh, I got my first Rolex. That felt sweet on the wrist. Then all of a sudden, you know, the nice clothes, and everyone's telling you how amazing you are. You're on stage, you feel like the guy, and all these things. And what's happening is this slow, very subtle deterioration, if you allow it. And it's just what happened to me. You know, I don't need, you know, I didn't get up the next day and do some of the work, and the money still came in. That's residual income, right? So that's fine, because in the beginning you're going to do more than what you get paid for, but eventually you'll get paid for more than what you do. You know, like, so that's dangerous. So then it's all of a sudden it's like, then the house, and I'm like, oh, you know, let me get the cream crushed velvet sofa. Well, maybe I'll get the hot tub as well, because that's cool. And all of a sudden, you know, this lifestyle slowly eroding at the very attributes that took you to the top. And I remember, because here's the thing, when getting to the top was a result of the person who I became, and you know, the self-worth and the confidence that came from like turning nothing into something. Do you know what you get from that? But then all of a sudden, when you're at the top, but you're not doing everything that you could be doing, do you know what that does to your self-worth? Because everyone still sees you as that guy, but deep down you're like, I'm not really at it. I'm not really doing the things. And slowly but surely that erodes at that self-worth. So yeah, I could see these things like creeping in. And just like you can create positive momentum, the same is true of the opposite, right? Negative momentum. So I had that moment one day where the complacency had kicked in after a while, and obviously the first company was great, but it was the second company that changed everything. Because when we started with them in 2015, they was big in Asia, they was big in America, but they wasn't really doing anything in Europe. I think, I don't remember exactly, maybe they was doing $1 million a year in revenue. It was like nothing, right?
Which company was this?
This is called Arix.
How do I spell it?
ARIX. So it's a different name now because they did a merger and stuff. It's called Partner & Co. But they was doing small numbers like in Europe. So that was attractive to me. I don't want to go where a company's huge. I want to help go and make a company huge. That's where the fun is, right?
And so going back to, you know, you don't want the complacency to creep in. And, you know, sometimes I wonder, I feel bad for people who are born in money. And I'll tell you why. Because they never have the fun of acceleration. They never have the fun of, they're born in top speed, you know, so they will never feel that going 0 to 100 miles per hour kind of a thing, that kick that you get out of that. And secondly, I think they're deprived of an opportunity of understanding self-worth, because they know in their minds, again, I mean, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we know who the fuck we are, you know, we know our reality, right? So when you see this and you see, okay, I was born rich and I know I fucking done nothing for it. I don't have that kind of self-worth. And go to the statement you made, that father who's standing on the sidelines and saying, you know, at it all the time, you know, play that fucking game hard. That's important, because I think those people are deprived of the opportunity. So this attitude of yours that says that, you know what, I don't want to go to a place which is established, right? I don't want it easy. I want to make a difference, right? Is that something that's come to you of late? Is that something you were born with, you think? What stage of your life did you think that you said, I will push myself to tougher situations, because the tougher the situation I'm in, the better I come out of it?
Yeah, I think part of it was that, but part of it was seeing the opportunity. You know, some of these companies out there were doing billions a year, right? You know, some of the top companies. And I didn't want to go to a cruise liner, you know. I wanted to join a speedboat that was nimble, that was flexible, that wanted to become a cruise liner, and I wanted to be synonymous with that journey. I wanted to help them write golden pages in the book, because that's where the fun is, right? So in that company, helping them go from, and not just me, by the way, of course, you start the movement and there's lots of other people, lots of great people who contribute to this. But overall, the organization that was built helped the company go from $1 million a year in revenue to 100 million a year, so 100x over a few years, right? That's the fun, bro. That's where it's at. So that became a thing. That was where the energy was. And And along the way, think about that level of revenue and think of how many people's lives, because that revenue is being split with distributors. Think of how many lives to create that sort of revenue that's impacting. Think about how many single mums are getting like £1,000 a month. Think about how many people are quitting the jobs that they don't love and now have that extra money to be able to do things that they've never been able to do. It was unbelievable. And I'll say this about that industry, right? And again, I know it's an industry that divides people. Ultimately, it's an industry of hope and possibility because most people don't have that in their life. They live a monotonous life. They do the same thing every day. They lost that little bit of hope. Maybe they're in the 30s, 40s. I'm not, got a job I don't really love, but, it pays the bills and I don't want to. And then all of a sudden you find a business where you see people doing great things and you just all of a sudden that little inner fire, that little spark again, that possibility starts to unravel in your heart, and that yourself, that is itself the reward. Having something that you're tuned into, that you can create something with, that like leads you every day feeling like tomorrow can be better than today. That's the real reward, and that's what that industry is.
Yeah, and I see this as an opportunity. I've been speaking to a lot of people about network marketing, and I know there are some brands which are entering into new countries, like speaking with people who are launching new skin in India. It's a massive opportunity for people in India because, like you said, the small ticket like £1,000, £500, £2,000, and that difference can be made to so many people, to actually masses. And the only way it happens is if you join in early, and then you make it big. So rather than joining a cruise ship.
Yeah.
You join a speedboat.
Turn it into a cruise ship.
Yeah. Oh, great.
So also, as well, it's important. Where else in the world? Think about this.
Yeah.
Scruffy council estate kid, got expelled from school. Yeah, carved out a solid career in the military. Where else can you have a business? The first one was £50 and the second one was like £500. Yeah, I got some products for that. So let's say £550 those two businesses cost me. And obviously some products that you use all the time. But let's just say to start the businesses, where else can you buy a business for £550 and turn it into multiple seven figures? It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I know no one needs to tell me that that's the industry of hope and possibility. It changed mine and my kid's life forever. And along the way, it helps many other people do the same. So it's not for everyone. There's other businesses and ventures, and we'll talk about that later on, that we're involved in. But when you come from nothing, when you don't really have an experience, there's things out there. It's not just that industry where you can build a little side hustle, and maybe you don't get to that level. Maybe you don't make millions, and not everyone does, right? And that's fine. But maybe for you, if you earn an extra £1,000 a month, and now you got that little bit of money where you can go on the holidays, where you can pay the mortgage off, where you can treat your mum and dad. That's the real beauty of that industry. And you know what? It's probably the fairest industry in the world, because it's not like a boss who decides whether you're getting a pay rise. It's just compensation. That's what they call it. You do A and B, you get C. That's how it works. So if you want to create more, if you want to earn more, you got to do more. That's it. Very simple maths.
James, how did you move from, before I jump to that one, tell me your lowest point as an entrepreneur. Losing money, because all of us have, made some bad decisions, good decisions, and
yeah. How long have you got? Okay, now there's been a few, right? One of the ones is when I think they call it new money. That's what I was making the money, and I wasn't overly, but like I'm a guy who came from nothing. I just wanted some nice things. But where I was at that point, I remember having like the Porsche 911, beautiful car by the way. Had it all customized. I had my gold Rolex on, sat in the car, and this one day, I just felt miserable. And I don't know why. And I felt like, why am I miserable? I've got all the things that I thought would make me happy. And yet at that point, I wasn't. So that was a big lesson for me. So while it was a low point then, it's actually an important part of the journey, because that's what happens. We can't connect the dots forwards, only backwards. We think at the time it's a struggle, but actually maybe it has more meaning, but you don't see the lesson yet. So that was a point, but I had to learn over time that money alone doesn't make you happy. What does is fulfillment. You know, like doing something that you're proud of, being proud of yourself, helping other people. And I was doing that along the way, but I'd lost my way a little bit. And I was probably stressed out, overwhelmed, and a little bit burnt out. We know what that's like as an entrepreneur. So yeah, that was one of the lessons. There's been other ones. You've seen one of the videos, right? What I talked about. So now all of a sudden, you know, I'm making money.
Yeah, you lost a lot of money in once. You lost some couple of $100,000 kind of shit. That happened, right?
Oh yeah, that was a fun day. now I love it. Yeah. Well, you know, I was, even though I'd had some nice things, car and a watch and whatever else, I wasn't just splashing on anything. You know, I was pretty decent. Yeah, I was living a good life, but I was also, what do I do with money? I was wise enough to know that I need to put this to work. But, you know, in the beginning, like, you know what you know, and it's what you don't know that always holds you back, right? And I've got a trust in nature, and there was like some things, went down some alleyways that kind of didn't work out for me. But this one I was really confident about, and it was actually the second company that we talked about, Arix. They did a merger, and I'd stepped away back then. They merged with another company. And this other company, so this merge come together, and the company was massively undervalued on the stock market. The reason why they went with this other company is because they were publicly traded. So it's two companies come together. The price at that point was hugely undervalued. Everyone who I knew and had worked with for 5 years, the leadership the record was impeccable. So it was a safe bet. So I thought, you know, and I was like, okay, cool. I had like, whatever it was, 250K, let's go. And there were people in for more than that than me. As some of the Americans say, we put the farm on it, right? Yeah. So everything was great until it wasn't great. And I knew the people on this side and I trusted them. But what we didn't know, the people who they partnered with and what they learned down the line. It's almost like you're dating and then you move in and you realise, this is not the person I thought it was. And there was this whole backstory. These people were being investigated by the FBI. Like, can you imagine? It was just this, like, some of the things I was hearing, I was like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, a Chapter 11 happened. So they come in and it was like, the company restructuring because he wasn't reporting. And literally what I learned that day is that a Chapter 11 means restructuring of the company, which means bankruptcy, which means that money's gone. So I was like, oh, okay, can you just confirm to me when someone said to me, what do you mean gone? Is it like, is it being held somewhere? Is it being, no, it's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, like gone as it, forever. Yeah. Okay. So that was interesting. And I'd done a little bit of work by that point on myself. And I was like, I'm not saying it wasn't a moment, but I look back, I was pretty proud of myself. Yeah, I walked the dog, you know, I felt a bit of a pit in my stomach, but I was all right. You know, after a couple of days, like, you know what? You know where my gratitude came from? Is I remember thinking, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would lose 250K in a day and I wouldn't be financially dead, I wouldn't have believed you. So all of a sudden, I was like, I got a roof over me, I got other things going on. And I was like, I'm good. And I'll take the lessons from it. And there was a couple of other things. The thing that hurt me the most is that because of my confidence with it, some other people put some money in. Not that amount, but, you know, people want to do what you do.
Yeah.
And I knew for them, I felt bad about that. You know, I didn't twist anyone's arm. They were doing what I wanted to do, but I felt that responsibility because if you see yourself as a leader, you always want to lead people to good results, don't you? And then the final thing that was a great lesson from it, one of my mentors said to me, James, you want to play at this game? Investing in businesses, all this sort of stuff. Just so you know, invest in 5 businesses. 1, 2, if they work out big, you've done great. Yeah. If you believe, if you are naive enough to think all 5 are going to work out, then you. And so when that one went, that was in my mind. Oh, that was one of the ones. One of the ones that didn't work out. I mean, I wish it would have been one of the smaller ones, but one of the ones that didn't work out. So despite that, I don't regret it. You know, I don't dwell on it. And there's been lots of other things since then that I've worked out. That was just one of those lessons.
Got it. James, you moved from network marketing into coaching. How did this transition happen? And I mean, and you're doing extremely well in your coaching business. I see, you know, and I know the good part about the way you do your coaching is you don't take too many clients on. You want to be involved with them. You do a lot of work with them. But it's very different, these two businesses. Network marketing is all about sales, or is it?
Well, this is interesting. We talked about this before, didn't we? So in the beginning, you are a coach in network marketing. So obviously, you're coaching huge organizations, and the whole goal is you're trying to help people. And there's a lot of people don't create what they could in life because of the limiting beliefs they're held back, right? So if you have a network, an organization of 5,000-10,000 people, and you help them just believe that little bit more, go and take a bit more action, maybe make a couple of sales. Do you know what impact that has overall on the organization? So you are coaching, you are guiding. Then I had leaders I was working with, so I had to navigate these relationships, and you understand, like what we talked about before, different personalities. Sometimes people need an arm around the shoulder, sometimes they need a kick up the ass, sometimes they need some wise words, sometimes they need you to be quiet so that they can lead. So all these things, I'd already gained that experience. But what had happened with network marketing, it given me so much, but the way I led energetically, bro, I was burnt out. Like literally, I was just done with people at that point, because it was a blessing and a curse. You get to lead that many people, and it's great when things are going well, and then when there's challenges, you're the first person they come to. So I just felt over time, and there was a couple of other things. There was a deal that was going to be done when this big merger was happening. I didn't know that was happening because that was NDA. I brought a small company to my company. There was going to do a merger. That small company would have been under me. The deal was worth millions. That didn't work out. And I was like, well, hang on, what? And all of a sudden, this small company, Arix was like, well, no, we don't want to do that. And I felt a bit like, we're partners. I've worked hard to bring this opportunity to the company. So then I was like, I'm going to do this small thing. And it was like, what do you mean? You'll have to leave what we're doing. And it was all this. But I've always gone, like, business for me is, I'm going to do at the time, I want to create like partnerships, right? And if I feel we've come to the end of our partnership, as it was at that time of Arix, because we're not aligned no more, our visions are different, and I have no problem with that. So I went to go with this small company. This is another crazy story. So they romanced me. Let's just say they showed me the crown jewels. This can be all yours. It was a deal, percentage in the company. We're going to build this new company. It's worth millions. So I kind of made this big announcement. I was like a Founders Club member of Arix. Made this big announcement that I was stepping away from that. And then by the time I got over to this small company, it was like the mask fell off. Like this guy I seen who he was, I was like, and he tried to pull the rug from underneath me. So I was like, oh, now I'm here, and if I stay here and tolerate this, this is going to be misery for me. I'll make a lot of money, but it's going to be miserable. So at that moment, I was like, you can keep it, even though I just kind of walked away from that position there. I'm not going to tolerate this. So now I'd like forfeited with this new company, whatever, potential millions. But you know what I had? Peace of mind, bro, and a French bulldog. No, because I was just like, I'm done. I am done with this stuff. And I was just at a point where I was stressed out, burnt out. Things didn't align. And it worked out well because I had such a great journey over here, with Arix and obviously the company before. And then this was a sign to me, like, you're done. Like, it's fine. I'd lifted the trophies. I made the money. I'd impacted a lot of people. We had a great time. But it was time to move on to something new. And coaching was natural to me. I was already coaching. When you've created something and other people want to create that, especially in that industry, then it's natural that, hey, can you show me how to do it? But during this time, while I was making money, I was doing things that most people were doing. I was pouring it back into myself. So like Tony Robbins, Brendan Bashar, Dr. Joe Dispenza, some of the top moguls, thought leaders.
So you actually attended the workshop?
Bro, I would land in cities all over the world with a backpack on and, with Google Maps, try to figure out where the convention center was. I'll be like in West Palm Beach, Florida. Excuse me, do you know where the Tony Robbins event is? And I'll go on my own because no one was thinking like that in my circle. And I just became obsessed with understanding like human behavior. Why do we do what we do? What separates those people who underachieve from the high performers? So it was just natural to me to learn it and then teach it. So that's exactly what I did. So I stepped away from the network marketing industry. And at first I did a bit of network marketing coaching. And within a few weeks of launching an offer, I'd like made 6 figures. It wasn't even like no ads or nothing. But the crazy thing was I stepped away from that because I didn't want to coach in that. So it was like, what you're doing, you can make way more money coaching this because you've been successful in it. But I was like, but that's not where my heart is. So I kind of stepped away, and my whole evolution as a coach has changed. At first it was kind of the psychology of success and high performance stuff, productivity, all that stuff, helping people get more out of themselves. And then it's evolved a little bit more with the work of Dr. Joe and really tuning into that higher level of yourself, maybe, a little bit more spiritual. And just I coach differently these days, and I focus on different things, but it all comes back essentially to the same things, that a lot of people will come to me for business, and it's rarely a business issue. Like, you got to align yourself. You got to get your ducks in a row. You've got to change the way you think, feel, and behave. And as a consequence, that's when the business will grow. So quite often people will come to me for like, hey, you've been successful in business, I want some kind of business coaching. But when you strip it down, when you look at it, when you take inventory, you'll see actually you need to really focus on yourself. Success is an inside out project. Once you do that for you, then everything else as a byproduct to that is going to grow.
So how long have you been coaching for now?
Well, I was coaching then. Pure coaching. I would say 5 years, but 10 years total. So I was leading, coaching, mentoring organizations from 2013 till 2020, and then since then full time in coaching. But there's been some consulting. There's different ways and methods and routes that I've took.
You also have a lot of love for the fitness industry. You invested in multiple projects in fitness, one of them being Ride.
Yeah.
And you now also invested in Fitco.
Yes.
And you're doing a couple of sites now. And I know you keep yourself really fit. You're the big guy in terms of, you do a lot of jiu-jitsu. I think you're going for a competition now, I think next month or something.
Yeah, European Championships.
The European Championships. It's a fucking horrible sport.
Horrible.
So why would you do it?
Perfect. Exactly. Going back to what we said before, to get me off the cream crushed velvet and out the hot tub, you need in your life what I've learned, or I do for sure, and maybe the people listening will agree, you need some misery. Because the misery keeps you grounded, it keeps you humble, it keeps you honest. Like the amount of times I've been on that mat and I've been at the bottom of a guy who's like, 110 kg and he's got his shin in my neck and I can't breathe. And I'm dealing with all this negative self-talk, as you'd expect. The inner bitch comes to the surface. And then, you get in the car after it and you put on some Adele, and you're just kind of questioning your life choices. But, you get home and you get a shower and you're a little bit tired and bruised and maybe your ego's dented. You think, do you know what? Whatever else I'm going to do today is a piece of cake. That's what jiu-jitsu is for me. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle for transformation. That's why I take my daughter out. I've said the same to you. It's like, she has a good life. And we talked about it before.
Yeah.
I could easily slip into giving her everything.
Correct.
But then I'm going to do her a disservice. So I take her to jiu-jitsu because it's a dose of misery that she needs in her life. And she knows that. It's like, why we go and, she's come home from school sometimes and said this was challenging and this was hard. I said, is it worse than being choked out on the mat in front of everyone? She goes, no. I said, well, there you go then. So it's fine. So jiu-jitsu is really a cornerstone of my life. It keeps me on the straight and narrow, keeps me, not that I feel I'm humble enough, but it just gives me perspective, man. Because when you think shit is hard, it's never as hard as, being choked out.
Interesting.
Yeah, with the other stuff, like fitness is like, I feel like, and this is what we've chatted about, right? People kind of like separate the two. It's like the fitness industry and the industry I'm in over here, if you like, kind of the psychology of success mindset or whatever. And I'm like, no, it all matters. Like, yeah, cool if you're in great shape and you got a six pack, but like you don't have an elite psychology, you don't eat well, you don't take care of yourself emotionally, spiritually, then how's that going to work out for you? So I don't see them all as independent things. I see how they all work synergistically together. But fitness is the foundation, man. Like, I'm not that guy. And for me, I want to be the leader as well. Like, the businesses that we're starting that already exist, you'd be running a business like that with your belly hanging over your jeans? I don't think so. You're really a product of the product. No, you lead first. And in my mind, even though I'm 44 at the minute, I'm getting stronger every day, fitter.
Yeah.
That's how I'm like. I'm not like I'm declining. This is a mindset, isn't it? And then I think because of that, the enthusiasm comes, and the business we're in is the transformation business.
Yeah.
That's what we get a kick out of, helping someone go from where they are today to a future ideal of where they want to be tomorrow. So it will always be a huge part of my life, and I'm excited that because of that it's leading to so many great opportunities, and like you said, Fitco, some of the things we're working on, and we've talked about in great detail, helping people. They'll never forget, like I never forgot, they'll never forget where they made that transformation. What a responsibility we have, and how exciting is that thought.
And I remember when I had the first discussion with you and you said, man, fuck what we're investing and what you're doing. The very fact that you're going to make a difference in people's lives, I'm in this.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the key. You know, if you can make a difference in people's lives, if you transform somebody's life, you know, they are with you forever. It's all about the community. You know, like we said, you know, you can pick up a program online and try to transform yourself. It's very, very, very hard. You know, you have to have too much self-discipline, which most people don't have. And then you don't have stories with you, and somewhere you just fall off the rails. On the other hand, if you're with people and you, going back to the statement you make, you get 10 boys in a room and you get them to do the shit that they're doing, they will do it just because they're together, because they have each other. And that's the power of community. And I've seen this, you know, back in the day when I was running my gym chain, the power of community is, unless you have actually witnessed it and it's been a part of your life, you can never understand it. You know, when you lose those, you know, when you lose those 10 kgs and somebody else next to you has done the same and a third person sees it, there is so much more belief in it that it just makes it easier for you to go through that journey. It's not going to be easier, but it's just that it makes it so much easier because you can relate to it. So tell me,
bro, just one on that, because that's so powerful. And meeting you, and I remember obviously hearing about you before I met you, and you're walking in this room, this fast-talking Indian, smooth with his leather jacket. I was like, okay, this guy, business and all that stuff. But the light bulb moment for me is when I asked you, I think it was maybe the second or third meeting where you talked about helping people and that transformation, and your eyes lit up. And I was like, I'm in. This is the guy I want to be aligned with. That's important, right? Because some people are just business and, you know, focused on making money and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that's not a factor, but you got to do that from a place of wanting to help people. So that was really important, and we're aligned on that vision.
And I think you've changed your own life by being so disciplined, right? At 44, you don't fucking look 44, right?
Thank you.
You had a six-pack ab forever. And how you manage to do that is discipline. You know, one of the things I look for people when I'm hiring them, if somebody's in decent shape, it tells me 2 or 3 things about them. One of them, you can't fucking cheat the gym, can you?
No.
You have to be at it always. You know, if you're in shape, it tells me one thing about you. You're consistent and you're disciplined. Those 2 things are very difficult to find. Third, it also tells me about people's resilience. You know, because you reach a point in the gym when you continue to work hard and you don't see fuck all. You see no results. And you have to still keep at it. You have to go back and reinvent yourself. You know, we say in our industry, we said, I've hit a plateau. You know, can't fucking go anywhere from there. Now, if you're not given up when you're on a plateau, you've just gone back. In business, it's the same thing. You come back, you come on the drawing board and you say, okay, what's happening in my life? What's going wrong? And you put down everything and you say, okay, this is what I'm going to change about myself, and then go full throttle again. That's very powerful. So for me, somebody being shape is not how they look. It just shows me what's gone behind it, how difficult it was to do it. And when I met you, I mean, obviously when I met you for the first time and Jake got me to meet you, I said, how the fuck does he keep in this kind of shape, man? And says, boss, you don't know what he does, you know. And then obviously over a period of time, I've got to know you. How do we now help people? The community here. We're going to be very close to this place and courts, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, how do we help the community here? What's your vision for this?
Well, we talked about it before. The first thing is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's really what community is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, who are these guys? And we know what sort of product we're going to deliver and the sort of service that's going to be the standard. But it's people spending time with people, man. And like, they got to feel that. We've been in some places, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about how well Ride's done. And the level of customer service there, people always comment on it. It's like normal. It's not even like forced. That's just who they are, right? All the guys do such an amazing job there. But a lot of the world isn't like that. They kind of pay lip service. You think it will be a standard service, you know, like it's just not. I've been in like brands that are well established, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm annoying people just by being here, right? So for us coming into Ancoats, like this is an emerging community, like. We got to come and serve. We got to be value first. It's not like, what can we get? We talked about some of the things that we might do at the start. And it's like, now we're going to give like crazy value, because that's how people know. It's like, oh, okay, these guys really want to help people. And you do that by demonstrating through your actions, not by words, because anyone can talk it. So yeah, exactly. So you come and demonstrate it, and then you show people that, okay, that if you come and spend time in this environment, that you'll get everything you need and more, not just from like training, transformation, all those things, but it's really the community and the people behind it, that people feel like, nah, this is something I want to be a part of, because it just feels aligned.
James, your businesses are kind of diverse also.
Yeah.
You're doing coaching on one end. You're invested in businesses like Ride and Fitco. You're also doing something around breathwork, right? While they're all in a way very close to the human being in a way. You're coaching people for them to be better versions of themselves. You're getting people to get fitter in their own lives. I remember attending one of the workshops with you on, breathwork. And, I actually feel I'd never experienced something like that. Talk me through what you're doing in your breathwork journey.
Yeah, so nothing's changed for me in the last 10 years. I've just been insatiable in my desire to figure stuff out, to learn strategies, tools, techniques that can help people level up, right? So been on this journey, and last year I was at a retreat with Dr. Joe Dispenza, a advanced retreat, and there's high-level people there, biohackers, doctors, scientists. It's just great for networking. And you meet someone in places like that, and within 3 minutes, you're like best friends. You're just aligned, right? You're on the same path. This guy gives me a breath work, and I've done some breath work before. And he said, honestly, he's like, brother, in like 15 minutes. I was like, yeah. And I did it. And I was like, what was that? I never felt a shift like that. 15 minutes where I was like, this is. So then naturally, I'm like, with Jake, if you're like, bro, try this, and like, family, just try it. That's all I'm saying. And then people are like, what was that? So in 15 minutes, people were able to change the state. People were dissipating stress. They were resetting the nervous system. They felt different. 15 minutes. So I have an obsessive nature, which, there are pros and cons to that. But in this case, it was a pro, because I'm like, right, I'm in. So I just drop everything I'm doing, and I'm diving into breath work. Now, bearing in mind, I've been coaching for a long time, meditation, lots of these tools and strategies to help people make mental transformations. But on this, I was like, right, I want to figure this out. And there's lots of great breathwork practitioners, but, it's fair to say I'm not your typical guy. I don't have the flary pants, the crystals, and the long hair. And that's fine. That's who they are. And I just want to be authentic to myself. So I was like, what's the angle for me? Like, I want to find something. And it was crazy. So already talking about the things that I do every day, right? I eat well, I train, I meditate, do breath work, I listen to frequencies, I'm NLP trained, binaural beats. There are all these different things that I do that actually take a lot of time, but it's not a chore to me. It's how I live my life. Then I found a breath work that contained it all. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. It was like ancient wisdom, what we talked about before, but it was modern technology. So I was like, I have to try this. I tried it. Oh my God, bro. I was like, and I'm not a crier. I'm not that guy, you know what I mean, who's going to cry at Love Actually. It's just not me. When I did this breath work, and it was an intense one, it was an hour, and it was releasing some stuff. I felt things that I'd not felt in a long time, and I felt some things that I'd never felt. And when I cried, and I have no problem saying this, it wasn't a sad cry, it was a liberation. It was a joy that I'd felt, that I'd shed some stuff. So I'm like, I gotta share this with the world, because everyone listening to this is dealing with something. Everyone listening to this has experiences in their life that if they could let go of, they would take that opportunity. And we're talking about the fitness industry, right? But there's this whole wellness movement as well. So I think that's an important component. So once I learned the power of this technology, so in one session, yes, we was doing the breathwork, but it was frequencies, NLP, subliminal messages, binaural beats, all these tones. It was all constructed, beautifully crafted by these technicians to really induce these transformations. So in 1 hour, you're experiencing things in some cases that people have never experienced, not just from a mind perspective, but also from the body. Every experience you've ever had in your life is imprinted on the body. So when you know how to get people and breathe a certain way, and it's intense, and we can move energy, all this trapped energy, and we can release things, and there's a liberation, and there's a joy, and there's a lightness that you feel, and that's where we're at. So we've done a few sessions in the last couple of weeks. The feedback has been crazy. There's going to be a lot more to come in and around Manchester, and it's important because our business is the physical transformation, the Fitco, but there's also a space for the mental and the spiritual transformation.
100%.
And I don't think that, like I said, everything should be singular. They're all connected. So yeah, it's an exciting time. And when I'm in that room, and people have said to me, because we're building big businesses, we're building franchises, all sorts of things, and I'm facilitating like breathwork, and people are like, what are you doing? Like, almost they feel like I've got bigger fish to fry. I'm like, you don't get it. I'm going to build big businesses. I don't feel anything. The joy and fulfillment I experience when I see someone have a breakthrough moment, when they have their moment, when all of a sudden they walk out that room and they can't explain it, but they know something's different. Bro, I'll never stop doing that. So it's an exciting time. Lots of things are unfolding, but ultimately, in a nutshell, it all has to be around transformation. That's our core business. We talked about this. Yeah. I'm not going to invest time or energy into anything that doesn't facilitate human transformation, because that's where I want to be.
That's the cue for my last question now. James, if I am an individual and I'm struggling with multiple things in life, and I think I'm not at my 100% efficiency as of now, physically, mentally, wherever I am in my life, and that's most of the population of the world. Can you give us a blueprint of how do I go about doing things, and what should I do to make sure that I am the best version of myself?
Well, always, if things are not going the way that we want them to be going, we need to take inventory. We need to take stock. I was speaking to someone last week, and it's really interesting when people are in a bit of a storm. There are two types of people. The first type of person is they just talk about being in the storm. Maybe they even complain, but they don't do anything about it, right? They don't take any action, so they're passive in the storm. And the reality is you become a victim of circumstance, because we all have moments. I'm not here saying I don't have moments. We're navigating life, right? But you have a decision. Are you going to be a victim of circumstance, or are you going to be a creator of circumstance? So what I've learned over the years is I have tools and strategies. Oh, I'm going through a moment. Now I'll use this tool or that tool. So I think for people to understand that they have to, if they're in a phase that they don't want to be in, the action is the only answer. Of course, over time, you've got to learn the attributes and techniques or the skills. But if you don't do anything about it, then don't be surprised when it doesn't change. So always take stock of the situation. If you're not sure from there, a very simple strategy for me that served me well is find people who are further ahead than you, who can help you navigate that. Because that wisdom and experience, right? Success leaves clues. So that might be someone specifically who can help you deal with that stuff you're navigating. Or maybe it's in business. Yeah. Can you imagine a young guy today who's starting out with his first gym, and he meets all these problems, and he's struggling and he's stressed out? What would be the value of him coming and approaching someone like you, who's built these empires, who's built these franchises? Success leaves clues. So I think for a lot of people is, what I've realized is, and I'm still a student first, you got to get over your own ego. Your ego is not your amigo, as we used to say, is that, like, go and find people who are further ahead than you. Go and find people who know how to navigate those challenges and get them to teach you how they did it. because it will shortcut the way for you. And that's it really. Always take stock of your life, see what needs to change, and find people who can help you make those changes.
James, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, at the moment, probably Instagram. Obviously, the LinkedIn situation. We're going to be a bit more active on LinkedIn as time goes by. But honestly, you know, by the time, maybe not by the time this goes out, but when the transformation studio is there, like, come down, like, especially if you're in around Manchester, come and spend some time with us. It won't just be me. Samir will be there, you know, like Jake. The people who we're around, you mentioned Jack before, the caliber of people, high level people. So yes, we can connect on socials. That's great. You'll find me on Instagram and LinkedIn and even Facebook.
And what's your Instagram?
Yeah. Oh, James Lavelle Mentor. So Lavelle is Lavelle, Mentor. You'll find me on Instagram. But if you're in and around Manchester, just actually come and find us. Don't look for a handle. Come and see us. Come and spend some time with us. Let Samir buy you a coffee. But just be around. That's the energy what we talked about, right? Getting around the right people. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach Lavelle. Thanks for doing this today. Appreciate your time.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you, bro.
Thanks.